I thought the hardest part of my wedding day would be the 4-inch heels or the heavy lace train. I was wrong. The real challenge started the moment the guests left and my new sister-in-law stepped into the bridal suite. She didn't bring a gift or a glass of champagne. She brought a manila envelope containing 12 rules that would redefine my entire existence. They expected a submissive bride, but they didn't realize I was already holding the match to burn their kingdom down. The silence of the penthouse was louder than the reception music had ever been. I sat on the edge of the king-size bed, the weight of the silk gown feeling more like armor than a celebration. My name is Lily Rose, and for 3 years I believed I had found the exception to every rule in Julian's arms. He was refined, wealthy, and seemingly devoted. But as the clock struck midnight, the door didn't open for my husband. It opened for Claire. Claire was the elder sibling, the architect of the family legacy. She walked in with a cold, rhythmic click of her stilettos, her face devoid of the forced smiles she had worn at the altar. She didn't say congratulations. She didn't even look at my face. She simply dropped a thick, cream-colored document onto my lap. "Read it," she said, her voice like shards of ice. "Memorize it. This is how the Vane family operates. Julian is a public figure, and you are now his shadow. Shadows don't speak unless they are reflecting light." My fingers trembled as I unfolded the pages. I expected traditional family expectations, perhaps some etiquette guidelines. What I found was a manual for erasure. Rule number 4, all personal bank accounts are to be closed within 48 hours. All spending will be funneled through the family trust, subject to weekly audits. Rule number 7, communication with your biological family is restricted to holiday-sanctioned events. Privacy is a luxury you surrendered when you signed the marriage certificate. Rule number 12, an heir is expected within 18 months. Medical appointments will be handled by the family physician exclusively. I looked up at Claire. She was watching me, waiting for the flicker of fear, the tear, the submission. She expected me to be the girl from the suburbs who was too intimidated by their billions to fight back. "Is this a joke?" I whispered, though I knew the answer. "The Vanes don't tell jokes, Lily Rose," she replied, leaning against the doorframe. "Julian is already downstairs signing his portion of the postnuptial agreement. You're the last piece of the puzzle. Sign the acknowledgement on the final page, and we can all move on." I looked back down at the list. My mind raced through the last 3 years. Every coincidence, every time Julian had steered me away from a friend, every time he had insisted on handling my finances. It wasn't love. It was a long-term acquisition. But Claire had made one fatal mistake. She assumed I was coming into this marriage with nothing but a pretty face. She didn't know about the flash drive tucked into the lining of my bouquet. She didn't know that I had spent the last 6 months digging into the order she was so proud of. I stood up, the heavy silk of my dress rustling like a warning. I didn't reach for a pen. Instead, I looked her straight in the eyes and asked the one question they never prepared for. "Does Julian know about the offshore account in the Cayman Islands marked Project Phoenix? Or is he just as much of a puppet in your theater as you want me to be?" The color drained from Claire's face so fast it was almost poetic. The silence that followed wasn't just quiet. It was the sound of a dynasty cracking. The silence in the room became suffocating. Claire's hand, which had been resting so confidently on the doorframe, tightened until her knuckles turned white. She tried to maintain her mask of icy indifference, but I saw the slight tremor in her lower lip. I had struck a nerve. No, I had struck a gold mine. "I don't know what fairy tales you've been dreaming up, Lily Rose," she finally hissed, stepping closer to me. "But I suggest you sign those papers before your life becomes very, very difficult." I didn't flinch. I actually smiled. A slow, deliberate smile that I had practiced for months. "Difficult? Claire, I've spent the last year being scrutinized by your private investigators and molded by your etiquette coaches. I've already lived through the difficult part. Now we're entering the consequences phase." I walked toward the vanity, picking up a small silver scissors meant for cutting loose threads from my gown. Instead of signing the paper, I began to slowly trim the lace from my sleeves. It was a symbolic shredding of the role they had forced me into. "Project Phoenix," I continued, my voice steady and melodic for the narration. It's a clever name. A bit cliché for a money laundering scheme, don't you think? Diverting funds from the family's charitable foundation into a private shell company to fund your husband's failed real estate ventures? Does Julian know his perfect sister has been draining the family legacy to hide her own husband's incompetence? "Shut up," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Or what? You'll kick me out? I've already called off the wedding in my head, Claire. The guests are gone, the photos are taken, but that marriage license on the desk? It's unsigned. I switched the folders in the vestry before the ceremony." The realization hit her like a physical blow. She lunged for the document on the vanity, flipping through the pages frantically. When she saw the blank signature line where my name should have been, she let out a strangled sound that was half gasp, half scream. At that moment, the door swung open. Julian stood there, his tuxedo jacket off, his tie loosened. He looked like the handsome, charming man I had fallen for. The man I now realized was either a fool or a co-conspirator. "What's going on in here?" he asked, his eyes darting between his trembling sister and his wife, who was calmly cutting her wedding dress to pieces. "Lily, why are you doing that to your gown?" "Ask your sister about the list, Julian," I said, pointing to the cream-colored pages scattered on the floor. "And then ask her why the Vane family is currently being flagged by 3 different international regulatory boards because of a certain Project Phoenix." Julian looked at the list of rules, then at Claire. His expression wasn't one of shock or betrayal. It was one of exhaustion. "Claire, I told you to wait," he muttered, rubbing his temples. My heart didn't break. It turned into a diamond, hard and cold. "You told her to wait? So you knew. You knew about the rules. You knew about the bank accounts. You were just waiting for the honeymoon to spring the trap." Julian stepped toward me, his hands reaching out in that manipulative way he always used to calm me down. "Lily, honey, it's for our protection. It's a big legacy. We have to be careful." I stepped back, the scissors still in my hand. "I was a person to you, Julian. Not a brand, not a shadow, and certainly not a puppet." I walked over to the heavy velvet curtains and pulled them open, looking out at the city lights of Peshawar. Somewhere out there was the life I had before I met the Vanes, a life that was simple, honest, and mine. "The car is waiting downstairs," Claire said, her voice regaining some of its venom. "If you don't sign, you leave with nothing. Just the clothes on your back. No settlement, no jewelry, nothing. We will erase you by morning." I looked at her, then at Julian. I felt a strange sense of peace. "You're right about one thing, Claire. I am leaving, but I'm not leaving with nothing." I reached into the secret pocket I had sewn into the crinoline of my dress and pulled out my phone. I hit send on a pre-drafted email. I just sent the ledger for Project Phoenix to the lead investigator at the federal board. In 30 seconds, the Vane legacy won't be a kingdom. It'll be a crime scene. Julian's face went gray. "Lily, what have you done?" "I asked one question, Julian," I said, grabbing my old leather jacket from the closet, the one I had hidden there weeks ago. And the answer told me everything I needed to know. The wedding is off. The air in the room didn't just feel cold anymore. It felt electric, like the seconds before a lightning strike. Julian scrambled for his phone, his fingers fumbling over the screen as he tried to verify what I had just said. Claire, on the other hand, looked like she wanted to physically lunge at me, but the sheer weight of my revelation had pinned her to the spot. "You're bluffing," Claire whispered, her voice trembling. "That data is encrypted on a private server. There is no way a girl like you could have even found the file path, let alone the ledger. I set it on a timer to go live on every major news portal in 60 minutes. Unless I check in and put in a secondary code, the world gets to see the real Vane family legacy. And trust me, the public loves a fall from grace much more than a wedding story." Julian sank onto the bed, the very bed that was supposed to be the start of our life together. He looked small. For all their money and power, they were just 2 frightened people sitting in a gilded cage of their own making. "What do you want?" Julian asked, his voice hollow. "I want exactly what I came here with," I replied. "Nothing from you. No settlement, no hush money. I'm walking out of here, and you are going to let me go. You will not follow me, you will not call me, and you will certainly not try to fix this. You're going to spend the rest of your night wondering if that timer is real, or if I've already burned it all down." I didn't wait for an answer. I turned my back on them, and walked out of the suite. The long marble hallway felt like a runway to my new life. Every step away from that room felt lighter. I passed the bewildered security guards and the sleepy hotel staff, my tattered white dress flowing behind me like a ghost. As I reached the lobby, the cold night air hit my face, and I took the first real breath I'd had in 3 years. I pulled my phone out one last time and looked at the screen. There was one more secret I hadn't told them, one more card I was holding close to my chest. The city was a blur of neon lights and late-night traffic as I hailed a taxi. The driver looked at me in the rearview mirror, a woman in a shredded wedding dress and a leather jacket, but he didn't say a word. In this city, everyone has a secret, and mine was just louder than most. I didn't go to a hotel. I didn't go back to the small apartment I'd kept in secret. Instead, I drove to a nondescript 24-hour diner on the outskirts of the industrial district. I walked in, the bell chiming above the door, and sat in the back booth. 5 minutes later, a man in a gray suit walked in. He didn't look like a lawyer or a hitman. He looked like an accountant, because that's exactly what he was, the head of internal audits for the Vane's primary competitor. "You're late, Lily Rose," he said, sliding a laptop across the table. "I had a wedding to cancel," I replied, my voice devoid of emotion. "Is it done?" He opened the laptop to show a live dashboard. "The Project Phoenix files are being decrypted as we speak." "But there's something you missed. Claire wasn't just stealing for her husband. She was funneling money into a political campaign. If this goes public, it won't just be a corporate scandal. It'll be a national crisis." I looked at the numbers. My statistical training kicked in, seeing the patterns Claire thought she had hidden. She wasn't just greedy. She was ambitious. She wanted power that money couldn't buy, and she was using Julian as a distraction to get it. "I don't care about the politics," I said, sliding a flash drive across the table. "This contains the digital signatures. It proves Julian signed off on the initial transfers. He wasn't a victim, and he wasn't just waiting like he told me in the room. He was the architect. Claire was just the builder." The realization was a final, cold splash of water. Julian had played the part of the supportive, slightly submissive brother to perfection. He let Claire take the heat so he could remain the golden boy, the perfect husband, the face of the brand. "What's your price, Lily?" the man asked. "You hold the keys to the most powerful family in the region. You could ask for millions to keep this quiet, or millions to hand it over." I looked out the window at the empty street. I thought about the list of rules. I thought about rule number 7, the one about cutting off my family. They wanted to isolate me, so I would never have the strength to look at their books. They wanted a prisoner, not a partner. "I don't want your money," I said, standing up. "I want you to wait until 8 a.m. When the stock market opens, release everything. Not just the fraud, but the personal recordings from the bridal suite tonight. I want the world to hear exactly how they talk to the people they claim to love. You'll be part of the fallout, Lily. Your name will be dragged through the mud with theirs." I pulled the diamond ring off my finger and dropped it into his half-empty coffee cup. It sank to the bottom, a sparkling rock in a sea of bitter brown liquid. "Let them try," I said. "I'm the one who survived the Vanes. A little mud won't hurt me." I walked out of the diner and began to walk. I walked until the sun began to peek over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of bruised purple and gold. My phone started to vibrate. It was Julian, then Claire, then the Vane family attorneys. One by one, I blocked them all, but as I reached the bridge overlooking the river, I saw a black SUV idling at the end of the walkway. The window rolled down, and for a second, my heart stopped. It wasn't Julian. It was someone I hadn't seen in 3 years, someone the Vanes told me was gone forever. The man stepping out of the SUV wasn't a ghost, though for a moment, I felt like I was looking at one. It was Elias, my older brother. 3 years ago, Julian had convinced me that Elias had taken a massive disappearance fee to stay away from my new life, claiming he was nothing but a gambler looking for a payday. It was the first lie they used to isolate me. Elias didn't look like a man who had sold his sister. He looked like a man who had been waiting in the trenches. "I got the signal, Lily," he said, his voice rough. "The encrypted ping you set up on the old family server. I've been tracking their movements for 6 hours. They told me you took the money and ran, Elias," I whispered, the last of my composure finally breaking. "They offered," he said, stepping forward to pull me into a hug that smelled of home and safety. But Vane money is cursed. I spent every day since then working with the people who were actually trying to take them down. I knew you'd find the truth eventually. You were always too smart for their games. As the clock struck 8 a.m., my phone erupted with notifications. The Project Phoenix files had hit the wires. The recordings of Claire's cold ultimatum and Julian's pathetic excuses were trending globally. The Vane empire wasn't just crumbling, it was vaporizing in the heat of public outrage. I looked back toward the city skyline, where the Vane Tower stood like a tombstone. By noon, the authorities would be through those doors. By evening, Julian and Claire would be trading their designer suits for orange jumpsuits. I took off the leather jacket, feeling the morning sun on my shoulders. I was Lily Rose. I wasn't a Vane. I wasn't a shadow, and I certainly wasn't a victim. I had walked into their lion's den, and I had walked out with their pride. "Where to now?" Elias asked, opening the car door for me. I looked at the horizon, at the endless road leading away from the lies and the lists of rules. I felt a surge of power that no bank account could ever provide. "Anywhere," I said, a genuine smile finally touching my lips. "As long as I'm the one driving." Where are you watching or listening to this story from? Let us know your city and time in the comments below. End question. If you found a list of rules like that on your wedding night, would you have stayed to fight or disappeared instantly? This was a Lily Calm Stories production. If you enjoyed Lily Rose's journey to freedom, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Don't let anyone else write the rules for your life. See you in the next story.